The Era of Good Feelings, 1816 to 1824. Central question you want to ask is, what were some of the major characteristics of the Era of Good Feelings? If you look here, here's the election map of 1816. You'll see here Democratic Republican James Monroe's in the green, and you see that Federalist Rufus King, he's in the tan. So Monroe wins a pretty handedly election there. So James Monroe, 1816 to 1824, really 1817 to 1825. He's the 5th president of the U.S. He's a Republican. He continues the line of presidents from Virginia. That would be Washington, Jefferson, Madison, and now Monroe. He studied law under Thomas Jefferson. He's the last. He will be the last president to have served, and from the Revolutionary era, but he served in the Continental Army. He is Thomas Jefferson's, I believe it's his Secretary of, well, he is James Madison's Secretary of State. So also continuing that line of Secretary of States to take over and become president. Jefferson, Madison, and now Monroe. As you see here, he negotiated the purchase to the Louisiana Territory. So domestic issues. The Era of Good Feelings brought an end to the Federalist Party. Once again, keep in mind the Hartford Convention had a lot to do with that, with the sectionalist feelings and them wanting to not be involved in the War of 1812. Strong national feelings. Okay, we start to see ourselves as Americans now. Encourage confidence in the future. Interest in the nation's growth. Nation felt united. Patriotic themes in literature and art start to evolve, and what you're going to know this as is romanticism. They felt a duty to serve in government, and they felt a duty really to educate their public. So Henry Clay's American system. Okay, Henry Clay saw America as having two sections, the industrial North and the agricultural South, much like Alexander Hamilton. So he has three parts of his American system: protective tariff, second national bank, because the first national bank had a 20-year charter and it run out in 1811. So James Madison let it run out. And transportation improvements. So this is supposed to be the opposition plan to Hamilton's plan, but if you look here, protective tariffs and a second national bank, and we're going to have transportation improvement, all of which Hamilton had in his first bill, had in his first spending bill. So with the American system, as you see here, to the west they get roads, canals, and federal aid. To the east you get they got the backing of protective tariffs from the west. What does the South get? The South doesn't really get much here, so they're going to benefit from the roads, and so they supported the plan until 1828. They didn't want another tariff. 1828 becomes a big deal. So the protective tariff of 1816, it imposed a fee on imported goods. Is to protect New England manufacturing and to encourage more manufacturing. It prevented the English from lowering prices, and what the British were doing was they were dumping manufactured goods stored over here during the War of 1812, and they actually did this on purpose. They stored the goods in Canada, and then they would dump these things at a real cheap price so Americans could buy it, and the British would make money off of it. So now these goods were flooding the market, and so we needed a tariff to prevent the British from cornering the market on some products. And the protective tariff is going to make American-made goods competitive with imports. Okay, people bought more American goods. Now, the people who are not going to like this are the people who depended on those cheap prices, like the consumer. If you were a consumer of any of these goods, you're going to say, wait a minute, why do we have to pay a tariff on this? That's just raising the price. I could get it cheaper. So there's going to be pros and cons about this, but for this section here, tariff of 1816, you need to know everybody's on board with it. Not really, but you need to know that for the most part, it goes smoothly. Second National Bank, the United States. The first national bank expired in 1811 and was not renewed by Congress, so state banks were issuing currency, so you didn't have a uniform currency again. The Second National Bank is instituted in 1816. It issued a uniform currency, provided a place for the government to deposit its funds, and it's going to be a cause that's going to lead to the Panic of 1819, which is going to hurt the economy, and we're going to talk about. Transportation improvements. The federal government would sponsor the development of roadways and canals. The National Road in 1806 from Maryland to Illinois was a good road that opened up new parts of the West to settlement, and it's a plank road, meaning it's like a boardwalk. So it's made out of wood. It's US 1. The Big Ditch, the Erie Canal in 1825 in New York, it linked Buffalo to Albany, which allowed for the direct route to New York City from the Great Lakes, from Lake Erie. So it's going to link Buffalo to Albany, but it's 363 miles long, the longest canal of its day, longest canal in the world actually. And it's going to link Buffalo to Albany, but in reality, it links all of the old Northwest upper territory there, Chicago, Illinois, all those areas, to the Atlantic Ocean and to New York City. We're going to talk about steamboats later, but Robert Fulton invents steamboats. So the Erie Canal, it took 7 years to build, 8 years to build, 363 miles long. As I said, the longest canal in the world at the time. And it's much further than any other American or European canal. So here is the Cumberland Road, or US 1. As you see, goes all the way to almost really St. Louis. So the Panic of 1819, we need to talk about this. What were the causes? Over-speculation of Western lands, using state-issued money. Over-speculation, guys, keep in mind speculation is saying it's a prediction. When you buy property, when you buy land, you're saying in the future it's going to be worth more money. You don't know that for sure, but you're hoping. So that's speculation. And over-speculation means too many people bought too much land. Money was being printed by state banks, or what was called wildcat banks. There's no unified currency, so every state had a different currency. You didn't have the unified dollar. You had different currencies in each state. So there's too much money in circulation that lowers the value of money. When you have too much money in circulation, the value goes down. The National Bank is going to reduce credit. And this is because they're going to do credit checks a little better. They're not going to just give money to anybody. And as you see here, the National Bank rejected new money, and the state banks will not be able to pay the people back who wanted their money. So what this means is the National Bank's going to start printing off their own money, and they're not going to give the state banks the new money for the state banks' wildcat money. So, in other words, people don't get their money back. So, of course, people go broke. And really, the shame of it is you had to do this because there was so much money being printed out by these state banks, and it would have been hard for the National Bank to pay all that off. So, trade deficit, as you see, imported more than we exported. And it decreases the price of cotton in 1818, so we have a lower cotton price. So what were some of the effects? Well, we have these recalls on loans. What a recall on a loan is, you may get a 3-year loan, and you might be a year into it, but the bank's going to say you got to pay the whole loan off today. Most people don't have that money. So debtor prisons are formed. If you couldn't pay it off, you went to prison. That's typically how they handled that in those days. In those early 1800s. Bank closures, which are going to lead to unemployment. You start to see soup kitchens. We'd never seen soup kitchens over here before, but they start in this panic. Donations of shoes and clothes. A call for the reduction of government budgets. Monroe, what does President Monroe do? He does nothing. But that's normal for presidents to do this in this day and time. Remember, the economy worked on laissez-faire economics. Basically, leave the economy alone and it will come back. It'll figure its way out. So he's not going to be the first president, or excuse me, he's not going to be the last president that will just leave the economy alone, and it will rebound. It's going to take about 5 years, but it will rebound. So, reactions and results. Manufacturers favor high tariffs that will protect them from foreign competition. The South resented having to pay those high tariff prices. They had to pay for imports because of the tariff. This began a long campaign against future tariffs, and they hoped that freer trade would revive the cotton economy. The West, of course, blames the bankers and speculators for over-speculating. Like I said, this panic's going to last until 1824. It brought urban poverty to public attention, and it increases tensions between North and South, sectionalism, and of course the Bank of the United States will be blamed for this. So Western settlement, the acquisition of new native lands, economic pressures to move west, improved transportation, immigrants are going to move west. New questions will emerge. The need for cheap money, land, and transportation. And of course, the big question here, is slavery going to be permitted, yes or no? Okay, so here's what the West and Northwest look like in the U.S. This is the West we're talking about over in here, west of the Mississippi. The old Northwest is this area up in here. Okay, so you don't have to write this down, but the Talmadge Amendment, it says all slaves would be born in Missouri after the territory became a state would be freed at the age of 25. So this passes the House in Congress, but not the Senate. More Southerners are in the Senate. The North controlled the House and the South had enough power in the Senate to block this. So this amendment actually says, hey, for the first 25 years of your life, you're a slave, and then after that, you get freedom and citizenship, all of that good stuff. So as you see, nothing's going to come of it though. You do need to write this down. This is important. The Missouri Compromise. Between 1791 and 1819, we have 9 new states were added to the Union, 5 free, 4 slave, which balances the number at 11 each. In 1819, Missouri applies for statehood. It's the first Louisiana Purchase territory to apply for statehood. And they wanted to apply as a slave state. This is a problem. And actually, it looks like we might be going to war over this, not often talked about, but the North is not going to budge on this. The South says we should have a slave state, and it looked like we're at an impasse in our nation's history. In 1820, you get the Missouri Compromise. It's written, and what it does is it admits Maine in as a free state. Remember, Maine used to be part of Massachusetts, but they broke off and did their own thing, and they applied for statehood as a free state. Missouri applied for statehood as a slave state, so each one's admitted. And then you have this line drawn, the 3630 parallel, and it says no slavery in the north of this line, but slavery is allowed in the southern part. So the result of this agreement, the result of this compromise is it's a balance in Congress for 30 years. We don't really, the issue of slavery is going to come up, but when it comes up with, we're not have to worry about this really. The issue of slavery and compromise for another 30 years. Sectionalism versus nationalism will fully be created out of this. So as you see, Missouri is a slave state. The Arkansas Territory will be a slave state, but anything above this line here is going to be a free state. So we will talk about this in part 2.